himself.
Welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian with you guys on a heavy day. Obviously, we have to talk about what the monstrous idiots of Hamas have done. So we'll get to that. We'll get some of the consequences of that, and how Republicans are reacting. How are we all reacting? And then, of course, presidential news as well. Anna.
All right, well, we begin with Israel's response to Hamas's disgusting attacks on Israeli civilians. Let's get to it.
Israel's military said it's hit more than 1,000 targets in the besieged enclave. The attacks have eviscerated downtown mosques like this one and left over 120,000 Gazans displaced. Israel also says it leveled the northeastern neighborhood of Beit Hanun, which had been used as a staging ground by Hamas, the militant group that staged its unprecedented incursion into Israel over the weekend.
Israeli defense forces are planning a ground invasion, and they have already leveled parts of Gaza in retribution for Hamas's terror attack on Israel last Saturday. Now, nearly 1,000 Israelis have died as a result of that attack by Hamas, and the current death toll of Palestinians also continues to rise. The IDF said more than 900 Israelis had been killed since Saturday's assault, with dozens more held hostage in Gaza. It added that 50 families had been notified that their relatives had been taken as hostages. Gaza's health ministry said 765 Palestinians had been killed in the enclave. According to the UN, the Israeli bombardment has displaced at least 200,000 people, with electricity only available for 3 to 4 hours a day and access to food also restricted. Now, making matters worse, IDF, Israeli Defense Forces official Daniel Hagari told Haaretz that the goal of Israel's ongoing bombing campaign is to inflict severe damage to Gaza and not just strictly target Hamas military installations. He was quoted as saying specifically, the emphasis is on damage and not on accuracy. So what exactly did Hamas think they were gonna accomplish with this so-called resistance in specifically targeting innocent civilians in Israel? This is a resistance because they knew exactly what was gonna happen. They knew exactly what the Israeli government's response was gonna be. They knew that they were going to respond with what we're seeing in Gaza right now, where innocent civilians are being killed as a result. How is this a strategy? How is this a win? Aside from being morally wrong and absolutely disgusting, this is gonna lead to more deaths of innocent Palestinians. More deaths.
Yeah.
They've lost, the international community and even the United States, even the US media, something that I hadn't seen in my entire career and finally started to see, was this openness and this understanding to what was happening to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Now, the moral high ground is gone.
Gone, effing morons. So let me double down, quadruple down on what Anna's saying. So, what was going through their stupid minds? Okay, you think you're tough guys, you go in with gliders, etc. Okay, let's say that you hit the soldiers and you did actual warfare against the soldiers. Already you're not gonna accomplish anything with that. What are you gonna beat the Israelis? Your military is gonna beat the Israeli military? There's a less than 0% chance of that. Less than zero, okay? So, but you didn't stop there, did you? That would already be a dumb plan. So you went and attacked civilians. You lose the moral high ground instantly. But not only did you attack civilians, you attacked them in the most vicious way. Disgusting. The most immoral, disgusting ways. There's now stories coming out, it's fog of war. I don't have all, like I didn't personally see the pictures, etc. But it appears they have decapitated people and they killed little babies, let alone kidnapping grandmothers and children and wives. And
so
hold on. You goddamn morons, okay? So not only is that terribly inhumane, like how does that help you, the Palestinian cause? You see how evil we can be? That's your tagline? You fools, you barbaric idiots. So what did you do that for? What did you do that for? So that all Palestinians can be smeared for the rest of the time? So that all Muslims can be smeared for the rest of the time? Thanks to your stupid ass, thanks to your barbaric acts. God damn you, Hamas. God damn you. You're so stupid. Now, what's gonna happen to the Palestinians? They're gonna get slaughtered.
That's happening right now.
And you saw the pictures of Gaza. And what is the world gonna say? Is the US and the UN and the world gonna say restraint for Israel? We're gonna try, because I hope that Israel can rise above it. I hope Israel can get the moral high ground. I mean, the moral high ground would be giving up the occupation, and that would be amazing. But right now, we're not talking about moral high ground for Israel. Nobody's talking about that. And no one's crying over the Palestinians, because you morons started it and you were such butchers that no one's gonna care what Netanyahu does inside the Gaza Strip now.
Can I just
So
share
all
an
those
example?
Israelis dead for no reason, innocent civilians. And if you're protesting the innocent civilians of Palestine being occupied and brutalized and oppressed and killed, how does it help to do likewise to the other side? Other than you just being like, oh, I'm stupid. I'm just gonna do something stupid and dumb and immoral. God damn you. So now those poor people inside Israel, they got people that are in tunnels somewhere, man. Imagine your family members in a tunnel somewhere with these monsters, okay? So my heart can't break enough for that. And so, but then now when they come for you guys and they kill all those innocent Palestinians, that's on your hands, man. And did you not think that through? What was the end game? What was the end game after your butchery? What was the end game, you morons? What, Israel's like, oh wow, they killed a bunch of us, we give up. Is that what you thought in your infinitely stupid head? All right, sorry, Anna, go ahead.
What Hamas is doing right now as we speak is they're sharing videos of the Israeli hostages that they are torturing, including one woman who they basically took captive while she was at that music festival. They broke her legs, and they're sharing videos where they're parading her around naked. That's what they're doing.
You goddamn
That's
monsters.
what they're doing. That is what they're doing. So when the Israeli government would say, no, we can't end the occupation of Gaza. We can't, because if we do, they want to kill us all. They want to kill us all. They make that argument, right? They lent merit to that argument by specifically targeting civilians, by specifically murdering them, torturing them, and parading them around in those videos in the worst possible ways imaginable.
If you wanted to help the occupation last longer, you would have done exactly this.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations. You guys are so smart, you figured it out. Oh, well, we'll butcher more than they do. We'll oppress more than they do. And then what, the world will trust you? Israel will trust you? Instead, all they're gonna do for the rest of the time now is say there are no peace partners. And so it does, and by the way, look, I know, and Ben Gleave and I discussed it yesterday, that when you have a situation where people are occupied, depressed, etc., it is not a great place for moderates. Unfortunately, people wind up clinging to radicals, right? And I know it's super unrealistic, especially as they get pounded now by Israel. But if ever there was a time for Palestinians to turn around and say, no, not you morons, someone else, someone that could actually help us, someone that could actually get the peace, someone that could actually create an environment where we could raise a family in peace and prosperity instead of constantly being worried about getting bombed and occupied, etc. Can we find one smart person, one person and have the Palestinians rally around them? If you're a Palestinian in terms of the diaspora, spend all your money, all your energy, all your resources on finding decent representation of your people so that you're not represented by these monstrous idiots of Hamas.
Look, I just want to be clear. My heart breaks for the Israeli civilians and the absolute terror that they've been dealing with. And my heart breaks for Palestinians. Both things can be true. Palestinian civilians specifically. With that said, I want to give you a sense of what the thinking is for the Israeli government, what the United States is doing in regard to assisting the Israeli government. Let's start with Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel's foreign minister. Let's watch.
We have always known who Hamas is. Now the entire world knows. Hamas is ISIS, and we will defeat it just like the enlightened world defeated ISIS. This vile enemy wanted war, and it will get war.
Israel's defense minister also vowed to impose a total siege on Gaza.
There will be no electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Everything will be closed. We're fighting against human animals, and we're acting accordingly.
The Israeli military has called upon some 300,000 reservists, possibly pointing to a major ground offensive in the days to come. Major Ben Woolhouse is a spokesman with the Israel Defense Forces.
We've cleared southern Israel from Hamas's militants, and now our highest priority is to stop the attacks coming out from Gaza. While this is going on for 2 days, absolutely non-stop rocket barrages towards Israeli cities, population centers, indiscriminately fired. So all options are on the table now in order to achieve that aim.
All options are on the table. The international community is, for the most part, rallying around the Israeli government for obvious reasons. Hamas is doing a great job in providing the propaganda that would persuade Israel, the United States, and its allies to support any military operation against Gaza. And as a result, President Joe Biden gave a speech today specifically discussing how the United States plans to assist the Israeli government in its offensive against Gaza. Let's watch.
So in this moment, we must be crystal clear. We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel. Like every nation in the world, Israel has the right to respond, indeed has a duty to respond to these vicious attacks. I just got off the phone with a third call with Prime Minister Netanyahu. I told him, the United States experience what Israel is experiencing, our response will be swift, decisive, and overwhelming. My team has been in near constant communication with our Israeli partners and partners all across the region and the world from the moment this crisis began. We're surging additional military assistance, including ammunition and interceptors, to replenish Iron Dome. We're going to make sure that Israel does not run out of these critical assets to defend its cities and its citizens. My administration has consulted closely with Congress throughout this crisis. When Congress returns, we're going to ask them to take urgent action to fund the national security requirements of our critical partners. This is not about party or politics. This is about the security of our world, the security of the United States of America.
Now, I don't know what this has anything to do with the security of the United States of America, but one other thing that's worth mentioning is it seems to be a consensus among Israeli officials, US officials, and their allies that Iran is assisting Hamas in these attacks. That is the dominant and growing narrative right now, which means that there is a pretty high likelihood that the United States will engage in warfare with Iran if it gets to that point, and things seem to be escalating more. Ahead of a widely expected ground operation in Gaza, Israel said it had fully deployed 35 military battalions and 4 divisions and was building an infrastructure for future operations. It called up to 60,000 reservists in addition to a record 300,000 already mobilized. The Israeli military says that it has secured its border with Gaza 3 days after Hamas's attack. But the Israeli Defense Forces said that it had also hit a total of over 1,300 targets so far, including more than 200 overnight, and that 4,500 rockets had been fired from Gaza. The IDF added that the bodies of 1,500 Hamas militants had been found in Israeli territory, and that the area near the border with Gaza was now more or less secure. I want to note, though, that those claims are obviously coming from the IDF and they have not been independently verified. There's a lot of misinformation that spreads in the fog of war. I just want to give you that caveat as I share that information with you. But one thing is absolutely clear: a lot of people are dying. Gazans have no way out. They can't leave through the Egypt border. They obviously can't leave into Israel through the Israeli border. These people are stuck in a small area, about 2 million people, half of whom are under 18 years old, and they are dealing with bombings. They are dealing with absolute brutality, and this is happening because of what Hamas did over the weekend. Absolute lunacy, absolutely stupid and immoral. Disgusting. What else can you say about it?
So now Israel is going to get more military funding, not less. So another one for the idiots in Hamas. And everything is going to get set back. I don't know when you could end the occupation now. So what? And so Israel's going to go inside there. And by the way, I'm in favor of the ground troops because the ground troops are at least allow you to be more surgical, right? A bomb is not surgical. You drop it on a building, whoever's in the building dies, right? And as you saw from those pictures, that's already happened a lot. And so, but now again, Hamas has lost the moral high ground. They never had a moral high ground to begin with. The Palestinians had the moral high ground, but they've lost it on behalf of the Palestinians. And so now Israel's going to get stronger. They're going to be more justified. And then the last part of it is, there's always in the Israeli-Palestinian issue, who started it? It was this and then that time, and then you did this to the Al-Aqsa box, and you did the other thing for this, right? No, this one was super clear. Israel's had the occupation for 56 to 75 years, depending on your count. Yes, Israel did things that the Al-Aqsa Mosque said, but this is so wildly disproportionate that everyone will rightfully say Hamas started this. So when you start something, you can't be surprised at the reaction. And they damned all of those Palestinian civilians.
Exactly.
So did you go ask them, hey, do you guys mind if we go do this idiotic and deeply immoral thing, and then you guys will have to pay the price because they'll drop a bomb in your building and your kids will die? Do you mind? No, you didn't ask, did you? So, guys, this is now dark times. Netanyahu was already super right wing. He could, we'll talk later in the show about how he blew it, but that's not how people are going to perceive it. That he screwed up the intelligence. No, they're going to be cheer when he goes and levels all those buildings. So Netanyahu and the right wing in Israel are going to get more entrenched, and most importantly, hate is going to get more entrenched on both sides. So now the Israelis, if there was a strand of not hating Palestinians, it's almost gone now. It's almost gone now. So Hamas, you monsters. And for the Palestinians, after they get brutalized as they're getting brutalized now, they'll hate the Israelis even more. And neither side will see each other's point of view. And look, here, I'll add last thing, and everybody will get mad at me. But it's arbitrary, stupid names and religions. Oh, we are Palestinian and Muslim. We are Israeli and Jewish. Guys, you're the same thing. You're human beings, and you look near identical. You've been living next to each other for thousands of years. You're the same people. You're Semites. Who cares what label you put on it? Who cares? And the Israelis are like, no, they're not Israelis. No, that's it. They're not. They don't get freedom. They don't get land. And the Palestinians are, they're terrible, evil Israelis. Let's go kill them and cut their heads off. Ugh. Okay, congratulations. Hate each other forever.
And innocent people get caught up.
And innocent people always get caught because right-wing idiots decide that they're going to have more power and they're going to drive more hate. And half the time it's about religion. I got news for you. Neither one of you is right. Surprise! Neither one of your religious figures is correct. So you're killing all these people for no goddamn reason. I know it's more complicated than that. I know that. But if you think religion's not a part of it, you're just kidding yourself to make yourself feel better. No. God favors me. Does he? Does he? He doesn't look like he's favoring either side right now.
When we come back from the break, we'll talk a little bit about the intel that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu allegedly ignored leading up to this horrible attack by Hamas. That and more coming up. Don't miss it.
Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna. Go ahead, Anna.
Egyptian intelligence officials claim that Jerusalem allegedly ignored repeated warnings that Hamas was planning an attack on Israel, including an alleged direct notice from Cairo's intelligence minister to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So let's start with the specific warnings, and then we'll go to other allegations in regard to why Israel missed the intel that predicted that this kind of attack was going to happen. The Egyptian official said Egypt, which often serves as a mediator between Israel and Hamas, had spoken repeatedly with the Israelis about something big without elaborating. He said Israeli officials were focused on the West Bank and played down the threat from Gaza. Now, there has been flare-ups in violence in the West Bank between IDF soldiers and Palestinian residents in the West Bank. Part of that has to do with the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu allows for the building of illegal settlements in the area. Every time there is a religious holiday, there's more violence in that area. So a lot of the attention has been directed to the West Bank. And so the allegation is when there was intel in regard to Hamas planning some sort of invasion out of Gaza, the Israeli government was not really paying attention to it. Now, according to the Egyptian official who spoke to the Associated Press, we have warned them an explosion of the situation is coming and very soon, and it would be big, but they underestimated such warnings. And Netanyahu responded to that by saying that it's fake news, because I guess that's all you need to do as a politician these days when you hear something you don't like. No early message came from Egypt, and the prime minister did not speak or meet with the intelligence chief since the establishment of the government. Not indirectly or directly, Netanyahu's office said in a statement earlier in the day, but it appears that there were in fact some very specific warnings from specific officials from Egypt. It's one thing to hear from unnamed sources, it's another thing to hear from specific individuals. So in one of the warnings, according to the Times of Israel, Egypt's intelligence minister, General Abbas Kamel, personally called Netanyahu only 10 days before the massive attack to say that Gazans were likely to do something unusual, a terrible operation, according to the Ynet news site. And unnamed Egyptian officials told the site that they were shocked by Netanyahu's alleged indifference to the news and said that the premier told the prime minister that the military was submerged in troubles in the West Bank. Now, there's also the judicial crisis, which is being partially blamed for the Israeli government missing some of the warning signs. We'll get to that in just a moment. Cenk, what do you think?
So, look, I don't. There's always theories that come out about, hey, did FDR know that we were going to get hit on Pearl Harbor, but he let it happen anyway? There's theories about 9/11, blah, blah, blah. But the things that we do know is Bush got a warning, intelligence saying bin Laden determined to strike inside America. And he didn't do anything. He literally told the guy, you covered your ass, go home. Bush was on a month-long vacation and he didn't want to hear it. So I don't know if Netanyahu purposely ignored it. There's no way of knowing, and that sounds, it's a theory. You can call it a theory, a conspiracy theory, whatever you like, okay? Although there are sources, right? So this is not just made up from Bob on Facebook. Okay, but either way, all right, Mr. Tough Guy Netanyahu, so you missed it. This happened on your watch. Now, I know what happens. Both Bush, Cheney, and Rudy Giuliani, they all bragged. It happened on my watch. That's why I'm awesome. Are you? No, that shows you're not awesome. You let this happen. Now you can go back and kill other people, and Netanyahu is going to do that. That's what he's best at. But why didn't you actually protect people? Why didn't you protect Israeli citizens? I know when people get emotional and riled up in a situation, very understandably so in this case, what do? They rally around the leader. That we did it here in America in 2004. We reelected Bush, even though he's a moron and he let 9/11 happen and he was totally negligent. Okay, but that'll probably happen for Netanyahu. But if you're Israeli, you should be livid that Netanyahu is too worried about corruption and taking away Supreme Court powers and taking away rights from Israelis, and he didn't notice the biggest offensive against Israel, in my lifetime that I remember consciously. So that happened on your watch, Netanyahu. So you tell me, what was it? You didn't mind, or you're terrible at protecting the Israeli people? Because the right wing's always bragging about how we protect. Do you? Because it doesn't look like you did.
Well, in addition to that, I want to get into the discussion about the judicial crisis, which of course is Netanyahu's making, and that led to division among the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. It led to reservists refusing to, report to duty. It led to mass protests, many of which we covered here on the show. Some say it's too early to pin the blame solely on an intelligence failure. They point to a wave of low-level violence in the West Bank that shifted some military resources there, and the political chaos roiling the country over steps by Netanyahu's far-right government to overhaul the judiciary. The controversial plan has threatened the cohesion of the IDF, seen as the People's Army. And Israel has also been preoccupied and torn apart by Netanyahu's judicial overhaul plan. Netanyahu had received repeated warnings by his defense chiefs, as well as several former leaders of the country's intelligence agencies, that the divisive plan was chipping away at the cohesion of the country's security services. So obviously, news is continuing to develop. We're learning more and more about some of the failures of the Israeli government in knowing and that this attack was coming and foiling it ahead of time. We'll learn more in the coming days and weeks, but one thing that is certain, Netanyahu is certainly having no issue with absolutely leveling the Gaza Strip right now. Innocent Palestinians dying as a result of Hamas's disgusting terror attack on Israeli civilians. So at the end of the day, lots of innocent people, lots of civilians have died and will continue to die in coming weeks and potentially months. And who knows what other international actors are gonna get involved in this. Because again, you have the United States and its Western allies pointing to Iran as the country that is aiding and abetting Hamas in its attacks against Israel.
Yeah.
Israel has been attempting to drag the United States into a war with Iran. I think it's far more likely that might happen.
Yeah, and then we're all screwed. Not just Israelis, not just Palestinians, but idiots on our side, like Lindsey Graham, trying to start a war with Iran. Then we got a war with us and Israel and Lebanon and Iran and God knows who else gets sucked into that war. Now, we're not gonna lose that war, but we're also not gonna win that war. Everybody's gonna lose that war, everybody. There's gonna be so much carnage and death. Lindsey Graham will be ecstatic, the right wing in both Israel and Palestine. I don't know about ecstatic, but they've never wanted peace, never. And so, okay, last thing. Look, sometimes intelligence gathering is just, technical, using technology, etc. And that's great. And I hope America does that brilliantly. I hope Israel does that well. Sometimes it's from individuals, and one way of putting it is collaborators, and that gets pretty brutal, right? But no matter what you think of intelligence and how they gather intelligence, they obviously didn't gather it correctly. That's not in question. I mean, whoever was in charge of intelligence, and obviously of the country, in this case Netanyahu as well, the buck stops there. You blew it. There's no disputing that. Now that doesn't mean that you're morally culpable or you're more morally culpable than Hamas. No, we're not saying any of that. Hamas is morally culpable. But in terms of protecting the Israeli people, Netanyahu bragged forever and ever about how he was going to be the best at that. And it turns out, as a matter of literal fact, he was the worst at it. So you could be mad at Hamas, and you should be mad at Hamas. But you should also be mad at your leaders, and I'm mad at Bush for not protecting us on 9/11. And I'm mad at Netanyahu for not doing any of the actual legwork you need to do the intelligence, to gather the intelligence to protect your civilians. You blew it.
All right, let's move on to an interesting call for funding one government while ignoring efforts in another part of the world. So, American lawmakers are reconsidering the idea of sending additional foreign aid to Ukraine as it attempts to continue defending itself against Russia. Some Republican lawmakers think that that money is better spent in Israel, which is still attempting to overcome the brutal attack that it faced over the weekend as a result of Hamas. Now, Josh Hawley happens to be one of those lawmakers, Senator Josh Hawley, a Republican who put out this post. Israel is facing existential threat. Any funding for Ukraine should be redirected to Israel immediately. And there is a similar thought process among some Republicans in the House as well. In fact, a number of Republicans in the House oppose aid for Ukraine outright, but they have used this attack on Israel as a reason to pull funding from Ukraine and instead redirect it to Israel. And if you look at the numbers in Congress in regard to the number of Republican lawmakers who want to pull support from Ukraine, I mean, it seems to be rising. Last month, 93 Republicans voted for an amendment to a military funding bill offered by Representative Matt Gaetz to bar all military aid to Ukraine. And that's up from 70 Republicans who backed a similar proposal by Gaetz in July. Representatives Marjorie Greene and Elise Stefanik have already publicly opposed a combined aid package to Israel and Ukraine, and they might be taking cues from their voters. Among Republican voters, support for Ukraine aid stands at 50%, a drop of 18 percentage points since July of 2022, and 30 points since the opening weeks of Russia's full-scale invasion. Democratic support stands at 77%, barely changed from 79% in the summer of 2022. Among independents, support has fallen 8 points to 60%. And independents these days are the ones who make or break elections. So Cenk, what do you think about this?
So this is a very difficult situation because the reality is that the issue here isn't money. We give Israel an enormous amount of money. We gave them Iron Dome, which saved a lot of Israeli civilian lives, which I'm very proud of. And what is the extra money going to do? They're going into to Gaza Strip, right? It's not like they need submarines or nukes or whatever. They need bullets. But they have plenty of money for that, and they have more money than militarily and provided by us than the rest of those countries combined in the region. So your heart goes out to Israel and you want to help. I don't know that this is the most productive way to help, but then people are going to say, oh my God, you're monsters. The answer is always money, and let's give them more money. But we already gave them all the money in the world, and it didn't protect them from this. The answer in this particular, for example, as opposed to, for example, Ukraine, who is fighting a much larger enemy and does not have anywhere near the budget that Israel had militarily, and the aid that we had given Ukraine is not anywhere near what it was for Israel. Now, the aid we have given to Ukraine to fight that war is a lot, right? And you could see where it's going, and you could see the Russian army reeling, right? So you could see with your own eyes that here it's not, I want to help Israel. I just don't see the point of more money. That's not the right help. Intelligence, we should give them, like you want to send them half the CIA to get as great an intelligence as you can, whatever you need to do, that makes sense, right? Let's get them help, but, and it's, look, I know Netanyahu is going to get his vengeance, etc., right? at some point we have to plead with Israel, because we're pleading now. We're not asking, we're not yelling, we're not demanding. We're pleading with them to take the moral high ground and not cause so many civilian casualties. And so that's another thing that I hope we can help them with. And again, so the bombs that are dropped, I'm 100% against it on both sides. Hamas definitely started it here, etc. I want to be clear every time we talk about it. But the ground troops are better. Yes, they'll cause mass carnage, and they'll say, well, you'll say, what do you mean you ground troops are better? But it means they're trying to find Hamas instead of randomly bombing places they think Hamas might be, but there's tons of civilians there as well. So I'm in favor of the ground troops. Hate me if you want.
Yeah, and just to give you a sense of how much aid the United States provides Israel every year, it's close to about $4 billion a year. As Cenk mentioned, the United States funded the Iron Dome. And just to give you a sense of what the US has already committed to doing following what Hamas did over the weekend, let's go to graphic 7. Administration officials told lawmakers they are already expediting existing contracts for weapons Israel has purchased to give them a boost in the near term. The Biden administration also can use the presidential drawdown authority to provide additional weapons to Israel, though it would need Congress to increase the amount of money in the fund, officials said. Just today, President Joe Biden gave a speech indicating that he will be providing additional ammunition and military aid to Israel. So that is going to happen. But if you take your emotions out of it and just simply look at the numbers and the amount of aid and which country needs it the most, I think it's undeniable that Ukraine needs the military funding more than the Israeli government does. But even so, the United States is still assisting the Israeli government in its response to Hamas's attack over the weekend. So, as we've said in every single story that we've covered on this matter, a lot of innocent people are gonna die. A lot of innocent civilians on the Israeli side died over the weekend. There are still Israeli hostages in Hamas's, they're being held captive with Hamas, and I don't know what the fate of those hostages will be. But one thing that we also know is that parts of Gaza have already been leveled, innocent civilians have already been killed, and there will be more carnage to come. It is just an incredibly dark and devastating story. All right, we got to take another break. When we come back, Rashida Tlaib is flying the Palestinian flag, and some people are really upset about it. So we'll talk about that and more. Come right back.
Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Thank you to Samantha Toder for gifting a membership on YouTube, and Detox Nurse Wendy for gifting 5. We appreciate you guys. I'm gonna read only one comment here from Super Chat. Low Dog wrote in, I'm a conservative who watches TYT for a progressive view. I am so impressed with both of you. Well, thank you for saying that, and I appreciate you keeping an open mind and even watching, even if you disagree. That's how we're gonna get better as a country. That's how we're gonna heal as a country. We have to watch each other, listen to each other, talk to each other, as painful as it is. So thank you. All right, Anna.
All right. Democratic Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib has been facing some pretty severe backlash following her response to Hamas's terror attack on Israeli civilians. Now she's getting some backlash for flying the Palestinian flag near her office. Now I'm gonna get to that part in just a moment, but just as a reminder for why she initially faced backlash, her initial statement in response to what Hamas did was, I grieve the Palestinian and Israeli lives lost yesterday, today, and every day. I am determined as ever to fight for a just future. The path to that future must include lifting the blockade, ending the occupation, and dismantling the apartheid system that creates the suffocating, dehumanizing conditions that can lead to resistance. As long as our country provides billions in unconditional funding to support the apartheid government, this heartbreaking cycle of violence will continue. Now, it might be okay for her to put a statement like that out had Hamas not murdered nearly 1,000 Israeli civilians, but doing that right after news breaks of what Hamas did, maybe not such a great idea. So she gets the backlash. I agree with that backlash. Just gonna keep it real with you guys, okay? But what I do not agree with is the backlash she's getting for flying the Palestinian flag as an American, as a Palestinian American. Because the Palestinian flag is not the same as the Hamas flag. And going after her for that, I think makes no sense. But let me give you the full story. So she's continuing to fly the Palestinian flag outside of her congressional office. There it is, there's an image of it. Reese Gorman tweeted about it saying, new Representative Rashida Tlaib has a Palestinian flag hanging outside of her House office amid Hamas's invasion of Israel. But it's not a Hamas flag, it is a Palestinian flag. Palestinian civilians exist, their culture exists. The idea that she needs to denounce her own, like the Palestinian flag as, again, a Palestinian American makes no sense to me. But former Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon, went on Fox News and of course decided to discuss his reaction to Tlaib's actions. Let's watch.
Mr. Ambassador, what's your reaction to our Congresswoman, Rashida Tlaib? She's a Democrat and she is flying this Palestinian flag outside of her office and put out a statement blaming Israel, blaming your apartheid government for what's happening.
Rashida Tlaib, she's a disgrace. Shame on her for such a behavior. You know, imagine that in her hometown in Detroit, Michigan, 1,000 people would have been kidnapped and killed. Children, families. How can she even identify herself with such brutality? I think the people of Michigan should send her home. I know it doesn't represent the American people. We know that we have the support. People pray for us every day, and I can tell them we are grateful for that, and we will prevail. We are in the past, in Yom Kippur, we were in a similar situation, but together with the support of the US, we fought back and we won the war. That's what will happen also in this war.
Now, you also have Republican lawmakers like Congressman Max Miller introducing measures to ban the Palestinian flag, among others. He wrote on X, formerly known as Twitter, the halls of Congress belong to America. They should be reserved for flags that embody our great nation. The Palestinian flag should not have a place here. That's why I sponsored an appropriations amendment to end this silliness. And his amendment stipulates, none of the funds made available by this act may be used to acquire or display any flag or pennant other than the flag of the United States, the flag or pennant of any state or territory or possession of the United States, or the POW MIA flag.
Yeah, so I agree with you completely, Anna. So as I said yesterday on the coverage, yesterday was not the day to talk about, to voluntarily bring up the idea of apartheid, etc. It was just poor form, to say the least, because people are suffering and they've got family members there, etc. That's not the day to agitate on that. It doesn't mean the occupation isn't wrong. The occupation is wrong. But it's not a productive way to handle it, in my opinion. Okay. The Palestinian flag, I agree with Anna. It's the flag of Palestinians, it's not Hamas. You fly the Hamas flag, then I'm livid, and then I agree with everybody, okay? But as now the Palestinians are getting crushed, and you could largely blame Hamas for that. If anybody can blame anyone they like, okay? But the Palestinians are getting crushed right now, okay? So you want to have sympathy for the Palestinians, you put up the Palestinian flag today, I get it, right? And those are people. So, but I'm actually less mad at the two, the Israeli ambassador and the Republican than when I first saw the headlines, because I thought the Israeli ambassador was saying that it was a disgrace that she put up the Palestinian flag. Like, well, that's unacceptable to say that, but he didn't. If as you see the full context there, he could have been referring to disgrace as to the comments about Hamas and comments about apartheid, etc. And of course, he's the Israeli ambassador. He gets to say that today, right? And for Max Miller, at first I thought he was just going to try to ban the Palestinian flag, and that's just absurd and silly. But his resolution, to be fair, says all non-American flags and non-state flags, and that I could live with. And look, everybody to each his own, and everybody does different things. If I was in Congress, I'm Turkish American, I'd never put up the Turkish flag. It's not because I'm not proud to be ethnically Turkish, okay? but I'm an American and I'm in the American house. And so I just don't see it there. But that's just up to them. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the Palestinian flag at all. But the rest of it is problematic.
Also, I mean, what Max Miller is doing is basically theater, because his amendment notes, it stipulates that no government funding can go toward any of these flags. I don't think the government paid for Rashida Tlaib's Palestinian flag.
Yeah.
So again, to me, it appears to be, some chest puffing and all of that. But I want everyone to know the difference between the Palestinian flag. Because look, to me, the most important thing is protecting civilians, right? When it comes to this conflict, what breaks my heart is watching civilians, whether it's on the Israeli side or the Palestinian side, getting crushed and murdered as a result of what's going on. Hamas's flags look like this. So let's go to graphic 5. So one of them has that seal, the other has some writing with the green flag. The Palestinian flag, the flag of the Palestinian people, looks like this, and that is what was flying, or that is what Rashida Tlaib had hanging right outside of her congressional office. And look, whenever these terrible conflicts and wars happen, emotions run high. I totally get that, but you have to differentiate between the bad guys and ordinary people, ordinary civilians. Yeah. Right? So for instance, let's think about it in a different context. I hate what the Russian government is doing with their brutal and disgusting war and invasion in Ukraine. I do not hate the Russian people. I don't think Russian civilians should suffer as a result of that. So we have to be able to make those distinctions. We need to care about humanity, human lives, and again, civilians, protecting them and sticking up for them when, especially when emotions run wild.
Yeah, so I hate what the American government did in Iraq. I don't hate Americans. And in terms of the civilians, Hamas is, yes, now I see all over everywhere, online, everywhere else saying, well, the Palestinians voted for Hamas. Don't go down that road. That's a terrible road because the Israelis voted for Netanyahu. So under that logic, you say, well, then the Israeli civilians, it's a do not do that, do not do that. That's terrible. By the way, that goes 1 billion times more for Hamas. You claim that your problem was with the Israeli government, then you murdered innocent Israeli civilians. So then how do you say, oh, don't murder innocent Palestinian civilians? Well, you just did it. You just did it to them. So now you've lost all moral high ground, but we're not, for all of us, the decent people that get caught in the middle of these extremists all the time, for us, it's gotta matter that it's civilians or a terrorist group or a government doing something wrong, whether it's the American government, Israeli government, or a terrorist group like Hamas doing something wrong. We cannot then lay that blame on all Palestinians or all Israelis or all Muslims or all Jews or all Americans or all Russians. We cannot do that because the only way out of this mess eventually is for all of us to realize we're all human beings. We're all nearly identical. Our DNA is so incredibly similar. We're the same species. Stop killing each other and stop listening to people who tell you to kill each other. And the minute they tell you to kill someone innocent is the minute you should walk out. It's not complicated.
All right, let's wrap up the first hour. When we come back, we'll focus on some other news, including some pretty crazy allegations against freshman Congressman George Santos. We already knew he was a liar. We already knew he was facing criminal charges for fraud in Brazil. But there are some updates, and this is a doozy.
And guys, I asked you guys on Friday if I should run for president. Yeah, it's hanging out there, and we're gonna give you the results of the members only poll when we come back, and we'll give you an update on what's happening. We'll be right back. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.